Okay. We will give it just a couple minutes for some more people to join us today for our Wednesday webinar, and then we'll get started. Thanks for everyone's patience. Okay, everybody, I'm going to go ahead and get started. First of all, thank you everyone for joining and welcome to our Temecula Valley Chamber of Commerce Wednesday webinar series. We are excited to feature today sales stories that help you sell faster. And I want to tell you just a little bit about our presenter today. We have James Miller here. He has over 30 years of experience in sales and marketing in various capacities. He has sold to large companies like Apple, Microsoft, and Hewlett-Packard, as well as small companies. He founded Apex Sales Club on meetup.com to help further sales and marketing achievement. James also pilots Mega Microflow, a company that represents a medical device company from Europe called Beamer. James loves to help anyone interested in improving their health using Beamer and their wealth through sales and marketing achievement. And I'm going to go ahead and let James take it away. You have the floor. Thank you, James.
Thank you, Michelle. And I'm honored to be here today to tell you to describe for you ways that you can improve your sales process, reduce your sales cycle time, and gather more customers around your business, you and your business, as you grow your company with stories that help you sell faster. So here we go. I'd like to point out that if you're interested in learning more about selling, to go to meetup.com, apex-sales.club, and check that out. And also that to thank TVCC for today and having this webinar. I think it's fantastic to give us all an opportunity to learn from each other. And I'd like to invite you and encourage you to download the workshop notes at the address on the screen, bit.ly/5story types notes. And this is sort of a workshop / webinar, and I'd like to encourage you to participate and write your own stories as we do this. So here we go, 5 types of sales stories guaranteed to help you sell faster. Stories help bring people together, and many of us have memories of when we were kids sitting around the campfire telling different types of stories, ghost stories or hunting stories or stories of business exploits. And it really brings back for many of us really good memories and pictures of trips and memory handles of different episodes that happened during those trips. So this webinar is for you if you're a business owner, a solopreneur, an entrepreneur, or someone in sales that just wants to get better at selling. And these stories, especially these 5 types we're going to talk about today, will help you sell more per deal. They'll help you reduce the sales cycle times. You'll be able to sell to a broader audience. You'll be getting higher quality referrals and leads from your customers and prospects. And you'll be able to generate revenue faster. You'll see why as we go. I like this quote by Chris Brogan. Chris is an author and a coach and an expert storyteller. And he says, stories are how we learn best. And I agree. We absorb numbers and facts and details, but we keep them all glued together in our heads with stories. So the 5 story types to help you sell that we're going to talk about today are, number 1, the value stories. These are stories that you tell. They're short stories about benefits and value that your products and offerings bring. Purpose or founder stories. These are the why you're in business. Who are you and what do you bring to the table? Or a founder story. So how the company was made, created, and given birth to. And many times it's a challenging story and they're fun to listen to. Number 3 is the purpose stories you tell yourself. Stories are powerful and you want to keep your mindset focused on what's important, and the stories that we'll talk about in this webinar will help you do that. Company testimonials, again, are just very important in order to tell your prospects and customers why they should be working with you and what makes you special. And then stories about your company. And we'll talk about several that you can create that talk about who you are and what you do and why people should do business with you. So why not start now? The best time. Do it now. Get your stories written. If you haven't started it, get that process going today. So here are the consequences that I've experienced for not having stories. When you're in a sales situation and you don't have any interesting stories to tell, all you're doing really is you're relegated to spewing uninspiring facts and figures, and it's really not fun for the person getting dumped on, and it can be quite uncomfortable. You become unrelatable and less likable when you're just spewing facts and figures and you don't have any interesting stories. You can't show any personality or humanness. The conversations don't stack. And this is a concept of stacking where when you have your stories set up, those, excuse me, your stories actually, when they're pieced together, become a story. And they tell about your company and why you're important, especially to the people who have an application for what you sell. You miss opportunities because you don't get into any conversations. You don't get empathy. You don't get engagement. And as a consequence of all that, you really aren't invited back. And you don't, as a salesperson, this is death. So people love and remember stories. So learn to tell them, get good at it. They love and remember your stories. When you put these stories together, they'll enable you to build relationships faster. They'll help you to differentiate your company, make you appear stronger and insightful and helpful. People will remember you longer, especially the ones who relate to your stories. You'll be more likable, and you'll create that confidence that's really needed in the sales process. And you'll be able to do it much faster than you would without the stories. So that's going to help reduce the sales cycle and help you sell things faster. The stories are like workhorses, I think. When you put them to work for you, you'll get many benefits because people buy an emotion and they back up their decisions with logic. Stories are critical to convey that emotion. And people only do business with people they know, like, and trust. And when you express your humanness and your value in a story, that process of developing that likability and trustability are really brought forth and heightened. So it enables you to build confidence, and you can pepper in facts and figures in your stories, and that builds confidence and authority with what you do and how you help. It will enable your company to create a more repeatable and predictable sales process, and allows either you, if you're the business owner, or your salesperson, a way to create superior engagement with them and more meaningful conversation. So the true power of stories is when you have them set up, just think how much easier it would be to onboard new salespeople. Instead of just teaching them facts and figures about your offerings, you can teach them about the history and the stories surrounding that history and the facts and figures so that they can remember them better, like Chris Brogan says. It'll enable you to invoke that emotional response when you have the stories in place. And you'll be able to tell stories in first person present, which brings people right into the present time, even though it's maybe somewhere in the past. And I'd like to read you an illustration of that. So a little Halloween story, The Night I Escaped Hell. Now, close your eyes, take a breath, maybe take a sip of your beverage, and be prepared to listen to a little Halloween story. It's a chilly mid-December evening in the wooded foothills of the Sierra Nevada mountains 2 years ago. The rain is falling now, and it's getting cold enough to snow. I'm inside my house in a cozy room. The fire in the hearth provides warmth, and I can see my kitty cat, Toby, curled up, sleeping soundly on the rug in front of it. I'm sitting in my comfy, overstuffed chair, reading a book about hunting big clients and enjoying the peace and quiet. All of a sudden and all at once, there's a loud bang and an eerie sound of the fire just disappearing. It was a dead and final sound. The fire is gone. Toby, my cat, screams and jumps up from the peaceful slumber, extremely agitated. Every hair on his tail and back are standing straight up. His back is arched, his claws are outstretched, and he's walking sideways away from the fireplace as if he sees something in the now very dark chasm in the wall where the fire was just seconds before. Toby runs, still screaming away and out of the room. I'm sitting in a darkened room wondering what just happened. It's silent now except for the tap, 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 tap of the raindrops on the window from the rain falling outside. The tapping rain stops. It's deathly silent, and a very strange luminescent green light appears from inside the hearth where the fire was vanquished just seconds ago. That's the story that I hope pulled you into that first person present. We could talk about this later, but I'm hoping that that story helped illustrate the emotion that you can evoke when you're telling a story. Another power of stories is customizing your messaging for your particular audiences. And as illustrated in that first person present Halloween story, the pace and pause can really give impact and create that emotional response. So where will your stories take you? The first type of story I'd like to talk about is value stories. Create your value stories about your products and services. Here's an example. Now, say you have a value or a benefit of predictable weight loss results. Many salespeople and owners may talk about a predictable weight loss result as, our customers lose 10 pounds a month on average. And that's a true statement, probably. So how does that sound? It just kind of falls dead. But think about a 7-second story that you could tell that pulls in so much more. For example, I was able to lose 35 pounds in just 90 days along with my spouse, something I had no idea would be so rewarding and transformational for our marriage and our family. So think about how much more that brings to the table in terms of topics to talk about, conversations to have, memories to pull up, and goals to set on losing weight and setting a challenging goal. So your products and services benefits is taking your value and putting it into a story. So think about these items: better, greater, more, simpler, and on down. And for each of these benefits, detail a specific moment when you experience this in action and write it down, like the previous example. Put 5 or 10 of those together, and you'll have your first set of stories, your value stories that you can tell. The second type of story is the purpose story. So you want to create a purpose story about you. Why do you want to do that? Well, it lets others get to know the real you. Clearly, it conveys the human story behind you and your business. It'll enable you to connect on a higher emotional level. And people will begin to care about you, care about your company, and care about your mission. All because of some simple stories that you can tell. Now, here's an example. I was determined to solve that problem for my client, so I presented their situation to my company and asked for help. It took us some time, and thought we were able to create a real solution that provided my client a serious competitive advantage in their market. It was a real win-win-win for my client and their customers, and us too. So think about that, and think about telling that to a prospect and what they're thinking. Put yourself in their shoes and consider what that would bring to the table for them. And they're going to want to know more. It kind of pulls them into that situation and that story. They're going to want to know about what that problem was, and they're going to want to know how you solved it. And they're going to see if that applies to their business and what you could do for them, and if you could do the same thing to create a competitive advantage for them. So it increases engagement, and increases curiosity, and increases the conversation to a higher level. So list the best character traits and leadership traits that you possess if you want to create a purpose story about you, and I think you should. So write those down and detail a specific time that you exhibited one of these traits, and that would be your story. It takes just a few seconds to tell those stories, and those stories will help you to gain access to a much deeper conversation with your clients. And as an option, if you are a founder of your company, there's a founder's story outline that you can use in the workshop notes. So go ahead and download that. And I really encourage you to use that and create your own founder's story to tell when it makes sense to. You can create a 5-minute one, a 10-minute one, a 15-minute one, and be able to tell those at various events and in various content that you create. So the third type is creating purpose stories that you tell yourself. So these stories, of course, are very powerful, and you want to be able to tell them to yourself because they're emotional, and they'll help you to keep sharp, keep on pace, and keep focused on what's important. It's because owning your own business or being a sales professional requires leadership. So you want to create your own stories as a reminder of why you're doing what you do. And here's what you do. You use the prompts below and brainstorm a story to tell yourself that supports your continued growth. So for example, the time when I did something hard that I didn't think I could do, make a story about that. The time when I was scared or nervous, but I did the thing anyway. You overcame that challenge. I'm most proud of myself when I exhibit this personality trait. Write that in. And a time I did this. Another one is a time when someone told me I wasn't good enough at something, but I proved them wrong. Or a time when I didn't do something and later regretted it. What did you learn? And how did you overcome that? A time when I realized I needed something different in my life. A time when I felt great joy about Write that in. Tell yourself these stories. It'll give you a boost and keep you focused on what's important in business and in life. So the fourth type of story is your company testimonial stories. You want to talk about, what makes us different? Why do you want to choose us? Kind of toot your own horn a little bit. A good storytelling will help you gain a connection with your prospects. So you want to write your product or service testimonial, something like this. It doesn't have to be complicated, but you might say, we're the world's best at what you do because, and give a good reason. And this is the story that you want to tell your prospects. Now, once you've done that, here's the real challenge. Go back and write it again. This is where the work comes in and the real benefit. You want to add additional details, eliminate the jargon and technical language, take out all the facts and figures. Not all, but most. Provide the emotion that will give your testimonial story more impact. Tell the human side of the story. Give your audience, your prospects, a chance to get to know who you are and care about you and your business. And the fifth type of story are stories to help your buyers understand your company. These are critical. Buyers don't know who you are. They may not understand what you're about. They really want to help you to communicate who you are and what you do to their company, because they're always looking for better resources and better suppliers. And these stories will help you do that much faster than if you didn't have them. So stories about your company. There's 5 of them here. First one is why and how your company was founded. It shouldn't take more than 30 seconds to tell. The second one is, who are you? If you're the owner, an executive of the company, a salesperson, and what are your values? Where do you stand? This will help that buyer to better evaluate who you are in relation to all the other people and companies they deal with, and give you an opportunity to show your worth, to show your value, to show that you're different, to show that you care, show that you have virtues and you execute well, deliver. And how and why your offering was invented. What's the history of your company? Is it interesting? Is it inspiring? Help them to understand that, and they'll help you by telling your story to others in their company and helping influence the sales process for you in your favor. The fourth one is describe the level of integrity they can expect from you and your company. Articulate that to them. Be proud of it and show them that you are a player and that you can be there for them and that you will deliver. And the last one is stories about how the product is made. You can come up with 3 to 5 stories about how your product is made, the quality, the materials, the suppliers, the process. Give them the facts and figures here and tell them how much heart and soul you put into making these products. So that's the 5 types of stories. You want to make someone smile with your stories today. Go out and make your stories and go out and talk to people about them and help them understand who you are and what you do and why you're the best one for them to do business with. So I'd like to actually acknowledge the help of Kendra Hall, who wrote a book called Stories That Stick, and Paul Smith, who wrote a book called Sell with a Story. And this webinar and the contents was drawn largely from those 2 books and my experiences. Strongly recommend that you would pick these books up in Amazon or go to scribd.com, scribd.com, and they'll help you to pull out what you need from these stories from these books to tell your stories. So we've got some time. It's about 11:24, and I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. How much practice time is typical for each hour of competition in the following professions? So you'll see what I mean here in a second. So Olympic swimmers, how much time do you think they put in for each hour they compete? Any guesses? Well, if you said 2,000, you'd be right. The typical Olympic swimmer is investing 2,000 hours for each hour that they actually compete. How about professional football players? Well, studies show that they put in over 200 hours for every hour that they actually play on the field. So they're investing, each of these two professions are investing a lot of time in perfecting what they do. How about a professional musician? Well, that one is 50 hours. It's just still quite a bit. So here's the big tell. When we ask about the typical salesperson, I'm not saying a superstar, I'm just saying a typical salesperson, how much time do you think they spend per hour of sales time in training and practice? Well, I'm sorry to say it's pretty dismal. It's maybe 10 minutes according to the study that I read. So here's an opportunity. You tell your stories, you learn how to tell them, you create pause and pace and tense. You can really evoke emotion. And if you spent, instead of 10 minutes as a salesperson, maybe an hour practicing, writing and practicing and repurposing some of the stories that you hear in your sales process, it will help you to sell more. It will help you to bring more value to your customers and help you to shine. So here's a challenge for you. Create your stories and begin to use them. Track your average sales cycle time and see if you can shrink that sales cycle by 5%, 10%, maybe 20%. Think about how many more sales you could make a year when you shorten that sales cycle by just 10%. If you make 100 sales a year and you improve that cycle time by 10%, that means you could do another 10 sales. So how much, from a dollar amount, how much is each sale worth to you and your company? And if you look at that, multiply that by the 10%, the 10. And that's how much money you can actually improve in your revenue. And maybe that's a reason to go celebrate and say, woohoo, and maybe tell a story about that. So today's workshop was presented by me, James Miller. And if you would like to learn more about sales or have questions about this webinar, I'd like to encourage you to come to our Apex Sales Club meetings. It's at meetup.com, apex-sales-club. And I'd like to thank you. And I think we have some time set aside for questions and answers. And it's about 11:30. And I can't hear you, Michelle.
Sorry, unmute, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you, James, so much. That was really informative and very helpful, I think, for many people out there that have, a sales job and that's part of their business. So I do have some questions that came in. So I want to go through those with you, James, and see if you could answer them.
Okay.
Let's see here. Let me get my first one. Let's see here. Oh, when do you meet, James? I think you mentioned a group and someone wants to know when you meet.
We meet on Wednesday evenings at 7:30 p.m. on meetup.com. And it's a virtual meeting, it's free, and it lasts for a really quick half hour. The reason that I make it a half hour now is because when I was selling to Apple, I had to make my meetings a half an hour because time was very valuable. So I created this club to go be in peak state and learn one thing every week and go put that into action. So we catch fire, we learn, and we go do, and that's going to bring fast growth for you and your company. So that's what Apex Sales Club is all about.
Well, along that note, James, I have another question for you. And I know my husband is in pharmaceutical sales, and he has this challenge, which is a question that came in. How do you tell a story when you have limited time in front of a customer?
Well, sometimes you can't.
You have your elevator pitch for 2 minutes.
Right.
How do you tell a story?
Well, you can create an elevator pitch that pulls that story in. And the goal of an elevator pitch isn't necessarily to tell a story. The goal of an elevator pitch is to get someone to say, I want to know more. So the best elevator pitches are stories, because they just evoke this idea that, you know, you've got something to offer, and they want to, you know, they'll want to know more if they fit that, you know, ideal client profile that you're looking for. So the best elevator pitches actually target your ideal client with the messaging that kind of pinpoints their particular issues or challenges and hints at a solution and gets them to want to know more. So yeah, tell a story for that 30 seconds or 1 minute. And I can help you with that. If you want to join us in Apex Sales Club, be glad to help you put that together. It'll be fun.
All right. Another question. Someone asked, how do I best practice my delivery? So in front of the mirror and with a friend, how would you say, give someone advice to practice delivery of their story?
Well, that's a great question. I would suggest to start in the mirror and do it with a smile. People love to see your face, and when you're talking, to smile, and it brings a lightness to the conversation and gives you the ability to project. So sit up straight or stand tall. I'd say stand in front of a mirror to do that. If you're on the phone, put a mirror in front of you. And when you're on the phone, look at yourself smiling and talk on the phone. And that whatever you're seeing is what they'll feel on the other end of that phone. And get yourself in state. I love to get in state, which is a way to invoke an aliveness in your voice and in your presence, even when you're on the phone. And what I do is I snap my fingers and I'm in state. And I feel alive and energetic, and I'm ready to go. And I used to do that all the time. And before I'd go into my 30-minute Apple meetings, you'd get in state and you'd be on. It's like going on stage. You want to be on and present and alive. And that's what I would do before you practice, is get yourself conditioned to be in that peak state and be alive and energetic, and be prepared to listen and observe as you're presenting, because that's the key in helping you to create questions and listening and move the sales process along to help your client.
All right, thank you. Okay, yeah. Another question I have here. Do you have another sales story example? I know you gave the one of the weight loss. Any other short little, like if you were selling something right now, do you have another example you could give us?
Well, like for Beamer, when I talk about Beamer, I talk about my experience with it. So I talk about when I was introduced to Beamer, I went to I was at a farmer's market. I was sitting down, and they put the Beamer on my shoulder, and I was experiencing the session and relaxing, breathing, and then 15 minutes later, got done with the session, and I had an injury in my left shoulder that I was nursing from CrossFit, And after that first session, my arm was able to move from here way up to here. So I've gotten a lot more range of motion, and I have a lot more freedom, less discomfort. And so the Beamer has helped me to improve my life that way, and that I have more mobility. So that's my quick Beamer story.
Quick Beamer story. All right, and I have one more. Please, guys, if you have questions, send them in. I have another question that came in. It says, storytelling comes natural for some, but if not, what are 3 things to work on? You would suggest people to work on if storytelling does not come natural to them.
Well, if it doesn't come natural to you, start small. Tell a really short little story. Talk about something personal, something that you've done in your life, something that you're proud of. I would take one of the little stories about you that we talked about in the webinar, and I like traits. Take one of your traits, something positive that you're proud of, and talk about when you experienced that trait. Something that like you showed confidence when you helped someone with a project, and just talk about that story. And it comes from the heart. Tell it 5 or 6 or 10 times to someone, family members. Just practice, and then eventually it'll become second nature. So yeah, that's what I would suggest.
All right. Well,
practice makes perfect. They say practice makes perfect. It's practice makes permanent. And action conquers fear. So if you're afraid of something, do it. Go do it. And that's the best way to get over it. But start small.
Exactly. Well, again, thank you so much, James. I don't see any more questions, guys, from our group today. As I'm going to let you close up. Any final things that you'd like to mention?
Well, thanks again, Michelle and the TVCC, for allowing us to have this forum. And I'm looking forward to seeing anybody that's interested to join the Apex Sales Club. Would love to help you. Again, it's free. It's half hour. It goes from 7:30 to 8 o'clock on Wednesday evenings on meetup.com. And would love to see you there.
Great. Again, thank you. Thank you, James, so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This is a recorded session, so we will release this in about 48 hours on our website. Please share this with your colleagues, your friends, your family, anyone that could use some help with sales stories with James. His information is all there. And again, thank you so much, guys, and have a great rest of your Wednesday. Thank you, James.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.